Hi guys, welcome back to a Life Educationist podcast. It's myself and Caroline again. Today we have Anja Taljaard. Is that right?
That was correct. Well done. First time correct.
I've had trouble with that many times in the past. You are a qualified biokineticist from South Africa.
I'm a qualified biokineticist from South Africa.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about you and then explain what a biokineticist is?
Yes, so basically I grew up in South Africa. I studied in a small town called Potchefstroom. My first degree is human movement science, which is basically, people know it as sports science, and then I did my second degree in biokinetics. Biokinetics is basically sports rehab, and bio is life and kinetic is movement. So it's basically rehabilitating anything from injuries, from medical conditions, anything like that, and using exercise to rehab. That is basically biokinetics. So then I worked in Sandton Mediclinic for a year with the orthopedic surgeons there. Mainly we did hip replacement, knee replacements, and then rugby players' injuries. And then I moved to Dubai 2 years ago, worked as a personal trainer the first year, building my client base up, and now I'm basically only doing sports rehab and things like that.
So what led you to go into that when you were deciding your school pathway, your university pathway?
Well, I was always into sport. I've always done sports, but I always had injuries. I've always had some type of tear here or some imbalance here, and it always intrigued me of why is it not working. And I always went to physios, and I would injure my hip, but they would work on my knee or they would work on my shoulder, and I never understood this, how they can work on my shoulder but my hip feels better. And that's when I learned about the whole process of biokinetics and how it works.
I'm intrigued. Would you mind delving into how it works and what are the principles behind rehabbing somebody?
So it's basically, the main thing is to understand the pathology of the injury. If you look at injury, if you know the mechanics of the injury and you know the anatomy of your body, if you know, say for instance, you have a knee injury and you know the mechanics of how you hurt your knee, you know the joints, you know all the muscles, then we usually would do a full biomechanical assessment looking at the way you move, what muscles are too weak, what muscles are too tight, and then according to that there's a certain amount of principles that you apply to each joint, to each injury, and then according to that you go through the whole process. For instance, ACL would be a 9-month process of building up, starting from scratch, working your way up to return to play, basically going back to field and doing full sport. If you look at injury, or if you look at sickness, say you had
diabetes,
for instance, then you would do a full medical screening beforehand to know what the person's sugar levels are like. Are they diabetic type 1 or type 2? Because that's going to have an influence. And then basically work with the client. But you always have to know what the pathology is and what would affect it. Because training exercise is fantastic for any type of sickness, any type of injury, but exercise can also be bad for it. So if you don't know how to implement it correctly, say for instance with diabetes, if you train your type 1 diabetic late at night and you have a hard session, you can actually cause that person to go into a diabetic coma. So it's all about implementing the correct exercise to the correct pathology.
Wow, that's really serious.
Yeah, I lived with a guy in England who did the biokinetics degree.
Yeah, you call me a biokineticist, but it's biokinetics.
He did biokinetics, and he was telling me about it, and that's a tough course to get through. You have to do you got what is it, the top 30 or something in your sports science degree, or is it something small?
Yeah, top 10, top 15. It depends on how big the group is. So in our university, we were the top 15 that got selected for ours. You have to do practical hours before that as well. So before the application process, you have to go work for 40 hours beforehand. And
like in a placement.
Yes.
Yeah. So you really have to. It's not an easy course to get through. They don't churn out anybody out of that course. I was super impressed with that when he was telling me about it, so I can sort of know what kind of caliber you guys are. But you said you also touch on you do the pre-postnatal, you do general personal training, and then you do some work with cancer patients.
Yeah, I've had a few cancer patients. I absolutely love working with the cancer patients because you really see a good result of how a small amount of exercise can make them feel better. Cancer patients are in sometimes a bad mental state, and they feel bad, and the chemotherapy or whatever type of treatment they have, they feel bad, and it's amazing to see how uplifting the exercise can be for them. Even a 30-minute small workout makes them feel fantastic. I've seen people train through chemotherapy. It sounds horrible, but they would go throw up and they would come back and do exercise, and they just feel better for it afterwards. So it's really, it's so rewarding to work with cancer patients as well.
What type of exercises or what type of program would you go through with someone with cancer?
It's so difficult to say. There's actually no guidelines. Even if you look at the American Sports Council, there's no specific guidelines for cancer, because everyone's response to treatment is different, and then their response to training would be different as well. It also depends on what type of cancer. So if you had, for instance, lymphoma, or you had leukemia, you as a trainer must then know that their immune system would be off. Say, for instance, they had leukemia, they will be on immune suppressants. So then training them in a general gym would be the worst thing for them, because they can get sick quicker. So every type of cancer is different. If you look at someone that had breast cancer, for instance, that could affect their bones. So their chance of getting a fracture would be higher.
Why would that affect their bones?
There's such a hormonal
Okay.
fluctuation on that. And then also if they get radiation or chemotherapy, that can also then make them weaker. That can affect their range of motion. Some cancer patients, they find it hard to even stand for a few minutes, or kneeling down. Small things can have a big effect on them. There's also the fact that, for instance, a second comorbidity, basically, not comorbidity, I don't know if that's the right word, but secondary to cancer, they can get cardiac conditions. So then you must make sure to track their respiratory system, make sure they're okay in that. So every single cancer patient is different. If you understand what type of cancer they had and what type of treatment that you had, then you can basically alter it. The only guidelines they mainly give you is to say that it can be between 30 and 60 minutes and moderate to vigorous exercise. And then what you do in that space is literally up to you. I've had a client where the 1 week she was fine and we could do vigorous exercise, and then the next week she would come in and she would be so weak that she could not stand for 5 minutes. So then you would take it down and work a bit more on range of motion, things like that.
So when you say 30 to 60 minutes moderate to vigorous, that's broad.
That's so general.
It's so broad. It's so general. That's why I say that you must look at the type of cancer they had and the type of treatment.
Yeah.
And according to that, you must work. And you must be flexible. You can't write a full macro program for them, or a full 12-week program for them, because it can differ so much.
So what kind of pattern would you see with somebody? I mean, what was the most common cancer that you worked with? Can you remember?
Leukemia and breast cancer.
So how would they differ then from when somebody arrives at the beginning of their treatment to when they're leaving their chemotherapy treatment?
Well, they are usually just fatigued and tired. A lot of the girls had muscle wasting, so their muscles they were not able to, even with body weight, just move their hands, move their legs. And throughout the course of training, just to walk in a good posture, to hold themselves upright, they had so much more energy. Even though they felt sick and nauseous, they had more energy to even go run on the treadmill slightly. So energy levels was a massive thing, and range of motion was actually quite a big thing as well, because they struggled to get full range of motion. Everything is slow and not in full range.
So that what they might intuitively think that they need to rest.
Yes.
You're kind of like, look, let's get you doing something to make you feel a little bit better.
They actually advise, even if you go through vigorous treatment, that inactivity is not advised. So even if you do the lightest walk or the lightest movement, even the few stretches, it's good just to get your body moving. Because being inactive just makes you regress even more.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting, because a lot of people would think that, I'm just tired, I'm just exhausted, the doctor's told me to rest and just let me just see this chemo period of time out, and then I'll get going after that.
Yeah.
And then you would see the girls. Was it females only you worked with?
I only had females, yeah.
And then would you see them after the chemo was done in order to help them, get back to full fitness?
So with the one girl that I had leukemia, I saw her after bone marrow transplant, so not during treatment, but only after bone marrow transplant. And then the breast cancer lady I had while having treatment.
Right. And how do those guys, how do they respond to the training? How do you see them improve?
Oh, massively. The girl with leukemia was a bit slower because her immune system was so down, and she was in bed rest for almost a year. So she had massive muscle wasting, and it was quite tough on her to get back. Now she's fully functional, walking, running, everything. She's back to normal life. She fought cancer completely. The breast cancer, she had one breast removed, so they also took one of her lymph nodes, which also means that affects her immune system quite a bit. But back at it after 4 months. We worked through through treatment. After 4 months of treatment and everything done, she was fine, fully functional, ready. She then started doing like Barry's boot camp and things like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And how do you know? Like, how do you find out what these differences in cancers, how they affect people? I presume you have to look into the medication that they might be taking to see what side effects they are. Do you just take it case by case and research it, or is this what you were taught on your degree?
It's in one sense it is what we are taught in our degree. So part of our degree is to do exercise physiology. So it's the whole physiological system and how exercise affects that. And part of that cancer is one of the things that we cover. So you do know the broad spectrum of how to treat cancer patients and what to look out for and how that physiologically affects your body. But also it's a lot of reading, and it's having a very good relationship with their doctor as well, because the doctor, they don't always know what they're going through. So it's the best to actually contact the doctor. The doctor will know what type of treatment there is, what the treatment is really doing, what the dosage are. So it's having a good relationship with the doctors as well.
That's important, isn't it, with a lot of different things that we speak to, that you need to have a communication, like little community or little triangle of conversations about everything. It's very similar almost to the principle behind a complex trauma. Like when you have someone who comes in who's had an accident and they've got broken bones, they've got operations, different operations they're trying to recover from. There's no guidelines. You just have to rationalize it and work it out for yourself almost, and just build up at an intensity that the person is able to do.
Exactly. And everyone's response is different. Yeah. Like your response to chemotherapy might be completely different to my response. So it's literally taking every client individually and working day by day, even hour by hour sometimes.
What are some of the lessons that you've learnt by working with cancer patients that might differ from working with other populations?
The biggest thing is to really take it hour by hour. If I have an ACL rehab, for instance, I've got a full plan, and even if they sometimes complain that, I can't do this, my leg is, or my muscles are tired, you kind of always push them through that. Where with a cancer patient, it's a little bit different. You can push them only to a certain extent. I'm not really one with a lot of empathy. Or sympathy is more the word. I have sympathy, but not as much. And I learned a lot of sympathy with cancer patients because they really push themselves. You can see that they feel sick, but they still keep on pushing. So it's that small boundary between pushing too hard or not pushing at all. That's the biggest thing that I've learned between cancer and normal patients.
Is there any South Africans who have a lot of sympathy?
I don't think so. Well,
that was very
my husband wished.
Your husband wants. He wants sympathy all the time, I bet. I mean, it does open up a whole spectrum of what potential struggles people are going through when you work so closely with people like that. I had a family member who had breast cancer, and it's something you don't think about, and then all of a sudden it's there in front of you. And not even that I had to suffer from it, but I had to try and find a way to support. Yeah. And it's like, whoa, okay, I actually know nothing. This is something I never even thought about. Yeah. The exercise benefits to somebody who's going through them getting blasted by radiation. Like, how do we fix that? What do we do? It's good to know that there is people working on it. There is. It's not just, you have this, right? Well, go to your chemo and we'll see how you are when you're done.
Exactly.
It's like, no, there is actually something we can proactively do. Because that helps settle the mind.
Exactly.
They have some sort of control over what they're doing, whether it's a placebo or whether it's actually going to make them better.
Exactly. And it's also about planning for future as well, because people that had cancer, there's always that fright that it would come back. Where if you then focus your energy on training and getting a good training program, getting through the treatment, and then post-cancer, working your way into a good, healthy fitness life, it changes your mindset a little bit and takes that fear away of it might come back more into I'm working on my body, I'm working on my health, I'm being as healthy as I possibly can. So it puts them in a better mind frame as well.
Would you have lots of I don't know what the right word is. You must end up just talking to your clients you know, and educating them through the sessions rather than actually just beasting them through the exercises.
Exactly. It's a lot of education, small education. Why stretches are important as well. Why it is important to walk properly with the right gait. Why it is important to eat all the different colors of food. You know, it's small things that they completely forget about. They're so focused on the treatment and getting better that they forget everything else on how to treat themselves correctly.
Yeah.
So.
And would you find that it's sort of a general health deficiency that maybe led them into suffering from cancer? Or were you getting really fit people that were you know, because that's a big, you could really literally change someone's life by just giving them advice.
Yeah, I think maybe you can enlighten me on this a little bit more, but from what I've read, there's a genetic, obviously, component to it. That's a genetic predisposition, and then obviously an environmental, like, trigger. Is that what you learn in your degree? That is potentially a root cause as to why some people develop cancer?
In our degree, there's a route and how people develop most things, but cancer is kind of not one of them. Obesity, diabetes, metabolic disease, anything like that is, you can see a big difference from people that are active and have an active lifestyle and not. But cancer is not one of them. It's one of those things that your body can create this disformed cells. It doesn't really matter if you trained before or not. It as you said, it's a genetic predisposition if you have it or not.
That's important to remember, isn't it? Because, like, I would consider myself fit, healthy, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden, boom, you get a bit sick, go to the doc, and you're told, okay, you need to, this is your life for the next year. I mean, Lance Armstrong, how fit do you need to be? Do you know? Like
exactly, that's a very good example.
Again, I think I agree with you entirely, but I think there's a lot of other components to it. That it's not just about being fit and healthy. There's a lot of research that shows that there's lots of toxicity that can also contribute to the development of cancer.
Exactly.
Particularly because these days, say, as opposed to 100 years ago where we had very small amounts of toxic chemicals constantly in our food supply, in our cosmetics, in the products that we use. There's some research that says that it's up to about 60,000 chemicals that are within, like, the local ecology of what we do and consume. So I think that's a huge contributing factor as to you can be really fit and healthy, but if your toxicity levels are huge and your liver's not able to process those things, then, and you have a genetic predisposition, I don't know, please correct me if I'm just talking rubbish.
No, I totally understand. It is worth saying that we're not doctors, we don't know. So nobody listening should take too much advice from us. We're just literally spitting ideas that we're thinking and as we're speaking them right now. But they do. But in that sense, like, so much gives you cancer now. You know, your mobile phone gives you cancer, your laptop gives you cancer, coffee gives you cancer. Like, I'm in trouble. I've got all three right now.
There's things that can worsen it. You know, if you have it, if it's in your body and you don't know you have it, there's things that can definitely worsen it. If you have a lot of moles on your body and you're constantly in the sun, of course you're making it worse for yourself, you know. So there are things that can definitely make it worse. So having a healthy lifestyle is always advised. It's always better to have that healthy lifestyle, have that healthy nutrition, look after what you eat, how you train, because it can definitely make it worse.
Did you notice, so when you, in your studies and in the guidelines, aside from those two very broad pieces of advice, did you notice that there was, like, this type of cancer, you should be very cautious. With this type of cancer at this end of the spectrum, right, we can really push you because exercise is going to get a really good response. Is there any sort of spectrum like that you were made aware of?
No, not really. Not that I can think of at the moment. But what I can say is that something like leukemia that affects your whole body, it's your blood, right? So everything that usually affects them a little bit more. Like, for instance, someone that had breast cancer or had a carcinoma or something like that. So there is, but once again, everyone's response to it is different.
Sure. Yeah. Gosh, I wonder will they ever get a handle on that? Like, will research ever catch up? Because the first port of advice is like, let's not do anything that's potentially going to make this worse. Let's just focus on what we know will help, and what we know will help is the chemo. Yeah. You know, it kind of falls in line with the alternative medicine. You know, let's not focus on this because what we definitely know works is the chemo. So let's just push you through the conveyor belt of chemotherapy?
There's a lot of like functional medicine, nutritional therapies for cancer that have to do with eliminating toxicity and then hypernutrition. So really like feeding all of your cells, fixing like all of the mitochondrial problems that are happening. So that's from what I've read.
And I 100% believe that, you know, like
Me too.
if you have a homeopath, they use natural medicine to heal you. I use exercise to heal. So everyone has, there is so much outside. There's so many people that specialize in different fields. So I do believe that science and healing cancer for future, I think there is definitely a chance. I think there's much more to explore though.
Yeah. I wonder how hard it is to study it, because how do you pick a control group? Like, how do you pick a group to say, this group exercised and did chemo? We made this group not exercise, just chemo. You can't really do that.
Yeah.
If somebody,
especially with something that has such a broad range of environmental triggers potential, and especially with now with all of this science of epigenetics being able to turn things on and to turn things off and to change them just through what you do. It makes the variables really big.
And the outcome, we found that exercise helped these 500 people, and some other type of sleep 12 hours a day didn't. So these 400 people unfortunately passed away in the name of this control group and so on. You can't do that. You can't make that study. So I don't know how they do it. I wonder if they just...
Yeah, quite interesting though. So I did something recently as a Christmas present. I got like a genetic testing thing.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I did. How exciting,
for
right?
you, or did you give it to someone else?
No, for me.
Did you do it?
So I've put my saliva into a little tube and sent it off. So I'm really curious as to what's going to come back and what. So I was trying to be ambiguous as possible and not tell them my heritage to see what they came up with. But there was all of these really interesting questions in one of the questionnaires, and it was, you know, do you have this particular disease? Do you have this? Would you like to know if you have this, this, and this? And I was like, yes, I want to know.
So interesting.
What were those diseases, like cancer and stuff?
No. To be honest with you, I can't remember what they were. They were really ambiguous, and there was a lot of genetic diseases that they could say, oh well, you have the genetics for these particular conditions. But yeah, that's as far as I got. I didn't.
So what did they test on that? It's your DNA deep down.
Yeah, to tell you where you come from and what your heritage is.
So interesting.
So I could be like, you know, everything. I'm a fruit salad
Did they
anyway.
ask you about blood transfusions? Does that affect it?
I don't know, probably.
Was that on the list? Because Caroline had a bunch of blood transfusions. She has like 800 different people in her.
I'm made of everyone. I don't know, to be honest.
It probably doesn't, because it probably goes
to
a layer deeper than that.
Yeah, well, I think after 3 years, all of the blood transfusions that I've had have assimilated and I've made them my own. So they are mine now.
That's interesting though. That's very interesting. When I was 14 or 15, I had genetic testing for, there's something called a DNA diet, where they test your genetics and see how your genetics would affect what you would eat. It was also very interesting to see. For me and my mom did it, for instance, and she was very good on high fat, high protein, where I was not advised to eat high fat, high protein at all. I was advised to only eat low GI food, things like that. And also when you look at training, I can't remember much of it. It was quite a long time ago, but even my training, how they said, look, I was a sprinter when I was younger. I always did 100 meter, 200 meters. So explosive works, I'm more strong than I am endurance. And you can see that from the DNA testing as well, that they said that my strengths lie in strength and power and short distance, just from the genetic testing as well, and how then you can alter your training and your nutrition accordingly. So that was quite interesting.
Wow.
That's really interesting. When did you do that?
I probably did it 11 years ago. So
really?
it was quite
So they were working
long
with
ago.
technology from 2008, 2009, or 7 even. Why did you do that at that age? Because you're quite a competitive athlete now.
Yeah.
Were you saying what do you do now, if you want to just give people an idea?
So at the moment I'm a triathlete. So now I'm doing endurance, which is not in my genetics.
Yeah, you just said that's what I was going to poke at. You're doing.
Yeah, so I'm doing endurance. I'm training for half Ironman at the moment. But back then I was quite good in sprinting. So 100 meter, 200 meter, I was at national level. So we were tweaking the small things. You know, we had training up to optimal. We had everything up to optimal, but we didn't know much about malnutrition. So that's why we did that testing back then, just to see how we can make the smallest details count.
Yeah, the little marginal gains.
Yeah.
So what did they do? Test your blood? They test your...
We also did the saliva test.
Oh, so just from the saliva.
Just from the saliva.
And did you make the changes that they recommended?
I don't know. I can't really remember. My diet has been so up and down. You know, like technology now, the ketosis is a good diet. Then intermittent fasting is a good diet. So things change so much. But in general, I can feel that if I eat a high-fat, high-protein diet, I do not feel as good as when I eat low-carb.
Really, yeah?
Yeah. Low GI.
So
carby
carbs,
foods.
but just you have to have low GI.
Yeah.
That's very counterintuitive to what people are told as a general health and nutrition kind of advice. Did your mom make the changes?
Yeah, she did.
And did she find improvements?
Yes.
So that test was worthwhile then at that stage.
Yeah, and also with the training, I know they say, for instance, for fat loss, that's the one thing I remember. You know, sometimes if you run on the treadmill or so, they will give you the amount of METs that you are training at. So 9 METs or 10 METs. I can't even remember much detail. I just remember that they said, for my genetics, I must be training 12 METs on over. That's high intensity to get the same benefits. So for me, they said, in order to lose fat, it's not about the long, slow endurance type of things. It's more about the high intensity, according to my genetics.
This is very interesting. This is something I didn't know about. I wonder, is there people Googling DNA diet right now to see?
Well, that also falls in line. It's not so much DNA diet, but it's also, have you guys ever heard of the blood type diet?
Yeah.
Where they look at your blood type and then recommend particular types of food and types of ways of eating based on what your blood type is, based on the ancestry of where your blood developed from.
They're probably very closely linked.
Potentially.
Because I can't explain this, but your blood type and your DNA are closely linked.
Yeah.
So it's probably the same root.
I always tell my clients that if you are on the blood type diet or on whatever type of diet, if you're in a calorie deficit diet, you are going to lose weight either way. So it's then easy to say that, yes, my blood type diet worked. I think if you have the same amount of calories that you would normally eat on a blood type diet, that would be quite interesting to see. Because mainly this blood type diet or the DNA diet, for instance, you are in a calorie deficit, so you would see some weight drop. But I wonder if you eat the same amount of calories that you would every day and then do that, how that would affect it.
Yeah, do you know what's interesting? I've read so many nutritional books about different healing modalities using diet, and I think at the end of the day, the same rules apply. Just don't eat processed food. Eat food as natural as possible and a variety of them.
100%.
And as long as it's all coming from like natural sources, diminishing the amount of toxicity, and it's healthy and green and it's varied, so you're eating like
the colors.
Yeah, all the colors, including meats and vegetables and fish and eggs, but everything is as natural as possible and organic as possible, then like you're good. If you're eating like total junk food, like hello, wake up. Any diet that you do is going to make you feel better because it's moving in that direction.
Yeah. And then just aware of your calories.
Yeah, that's just my personal opinion. No medical.
Look, I think you're spot on with that as well. Just that calorie, people need to be aware of their calories as well, because when I make people count their calories, they're always surprised.
Yeah.
Like, oh, really?
Yeah, but do you know what I find so amazing? You can eat the biggest bowl of salad in the world and it's like 300 calories. And then you go eat one chocolate bar and it's like you know those tiny little roses? There's like 60 calories in one chocolate. Like I can eat the whole thing. It's ridiculous.
It's been Christmas, I can agree with that. I can do the same
yeah,
thing.
so it's like, okay, I'm going to have one chocolate or I'm going to have this ginormous bowl of salad.
Yeah, there's a really good book, and I recommended it to loads of people, and my sister's husband was reading it when I went back to Dublin recently. The Paleo Solution by Rob Wolf, and in that he makes it very crisp and clear, but without explaining what the book is. People should look it up and check it out if they want a very layman's terms like starting point for cleaning your diet up. But he essentially says you can have 600 grams of biscuits and you can have 600 grams of carrots. Right? When you look at how fast can you go through that full packet of biscuits, just taking one and eating it, and you're going to do that whole 600 grams. Take your 600 grams of carrots, you might get through 1.5 carrots before you're legitimately full. Just because the type of food that they are just makes you full. So by that principle, your calorie intake is going to be much less.
Yeah, that's so true.
Because you're not just churning through those.
That's a good way to explain that. I'm going to use that.
You can have
I'm
that.
stealing that one.
It's Rob Wolf. I stole it from him. But yeah, the DNA done, that's interesting. I didn't know about that. I never even heard.
I must actually look up. Maybe I still have my results somewhere around.
But what you said about, the calorie deficit, you're going to see good results. That makes a bit of a difference. That diet makes a bit of a difference when you're talking about an athlete who's trying to get the marginal gains.
Exactly. That's why I did it that time, and why I'm still now with the Ironman as well. You're eating to fuel your body. I'm literally eating every day to fuel and to be ready for the next training session. So it's not about being in a calorie deficit or losing the weight. It's just about making sure that your body is right, so that you can go do a 150k cycle or whatever it is.
So how does your diet look now then? What kind of training load are you doing now? Let's start with that actually, and then.
So I'm half Ironman training. So half Ironman is 1.9 kilometer swim, 90k cycle, and a half marathon run. So 21k run.
Back to back.
Back to back. So at the moment, I'm not strict on my diet, if I'm 100% honest with you. So I eat the right amount of carbs, I eat the right amount of protein. I try to eat half of my plate to be a salad or vegetables. I eat carbs. I know maybe you shouldn't, but I eat pasta, things like that. My diet really varies day to day. It depends on how hard my training session is going to be. So if I know we have a hard training session, I would eat between 2,000 and 3,000 calories a day. If it's a lighter session, then it's 1,500 to 2,000. So it really depends on what type of training I'm doing that day.
So you're pretty much counting your calories and your data crunching all week?
I'm not. No, to be honest, I know how I feel when I train. So I know more or less if I eat. Say for instance before a race, you would think that people say that you should carbo load before a race. We usually eat a nice fillet steak, 200 gram fillet steak and salad, and maybe a small bit of potatoes before a race. So I just know what food make me feel good, what foods make me feel bloated, and I just go with that. I don't count my calories, if I'm honest with you. I've got too much other data and training happening to count that as well.
So how does your week look then from start to finish with your training? Your bike, cycle, swim kind of thing?
Yeah, so basically Sunday morning usually starts with the masters swimming. So I do group swimming, the master swimming. And then Sunday during the day, we would either have a run or a cycle. It's usually Sunday is a recovery day. So it would either be 90 minutes of running and cycling, but low heart rate. Our training is all based on heart rate. So recovery sessions for us would be 65% of maximum heart rate. Then Mondays are usually swim sets. Tuesday mornings we have in our team, I'm part of a team called T2A, Try to Aspire. So we have our brick sets on a Tuesday morning. So 5 a.m. every morning we go bike and run. Whether it's a long bike and a long run or high intensity, it's up to our coach. So that
is that
varies.
What a brick set means, bike and run?
Brick set is bike and run, yeah. Wednesdays is swim, Thursdays is run, and then weekends is long. That's where you get all the hours, and that would usually be 100k cycle, 120k cycle, and 90 minutes run, sea swims, the bit longer work.
Do you love it?
I love it.
Do you?
You hate it, but you love it. It's one of those things where it's so hard, and it's such a mental fight. I fight with myself. Like this voice in my head goes crazy in a race. And you hate it, but it's so rewarding afterwards that it's so addictive.
Because you're not just doing it recreation, you're doing it to compete.
I'm doing it to compete. So this Ironman, this half Ironman would be my first one I'm doing. So I'm kind of in between race and race hard and because I'm trying to qualify for World Champs in Nice of this year. Yeah. So one side of me is like, race your first race as hard as you can. The other side is like, oh, it's your first one, chill it out and just go with it. So it's, once again, you're going to have to decide on that day how you feel and then just go from there and just push.
You're just going to go for it though, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, I'm kind of competitive. I've got a number in my head.
When is that event, that one?
That is the 1st of Feb. It's the Ironman Dubai, 17.3.
So that'll be around about the time that we get this out. And then when is Nice?
Nice is in September. 20th of September or
So you
something.
could just chill in February and then do another one
You could,
in
yes.
the meantime.
Yeah, so every Ironman branded race is a qualifying race. So there's 20 qualifying spots per age group. So if I don't do this one, if I don't do well in this one, you have another opportunity to qualify before September.
And your husband does it as well?
Yeah, he recently started doing it with me. So my husband was...
Because he wanted to spend time with you. He wasn't seeing you.
To be honest, though, it is quite tough. So when he didn't do it before, I would wake up every Friday 4 a.m., every Saturday 4 a.m. Then during the week, same thing. He wants to go out during, say for instance, a Friday. He want to go stand up paddleboard, and I'm so tired. I just want to sleep the whole day. So it is quite tough. So since he's been doing it, it's a nice thing to do together. And now we're also planning our holidays together. So our holidays are planned around races. So for instance, we went to Thailand recently because it's one of the most well-known races there. So it's a nice thing to do as well.
So now you can be completely wiped out and exhausted all weekend together.
Exactly.
Perfect.
It works.
Yeah, that is cool. What is he gonna compete, or is he just doing it for fun?
Yeah, he was planning on competing. Unfortunately, he was a professional rugby player a while ago, and he got a career ender. So he got a bad knee injury where he tore every ligament in his body, and he was paralyzed from knee down, something called drop foot. Went through a big recovery, and when he started doing triathlon, his knee wasn't completely ready. So he felt a little bit of pain. And recently it got quite bad. After the Thailand race, it got quite bad. So he went back to the doctor. Unfortunately, it looks like he needs another operation. So
really?
for now, he's going to cut it down a little bit, but hopefully get that done, do proper prehab, do proper rehab, and then get back to it as soon as possible.
Are you gonna help him?
Of course.
Does it? That dynamic works okay?
It works okay to a certain extent.
Yeah, I bet. Sometimes you got to pick your battles.
Oh, it can be tough. It can be tough.
Yeah, that's cool. That'll be good for you guys. Just to lots of people do that, don't they? They travel. They book their holidays around the events.
It's so good. It's a nice way to see the world. You plan the event so that's first, and then you have a week holiday afterwards.
Yeah.
And you don't pick up the weight at holiday, because we usually pick up a bit of weight on holiday. You enjoy yourself. So that also, it keeps you on track.
Because you're just exhausted, flat out for 2 days after.
Exactly. And you train while you're there. It's so, say for instance, Thailand, it was so beautiful. The bike course was so beautiful that we just wanted to go do the biking again. You just want to go swim in the sea again. So it's a nice thing to do outdoors, yeah.
What other holidays, planned destinations would you do?
So we're definitely doing Thailand again. I'm going to do that race for the rest of my life. It's a fantastic race, yeah.
What's the race?
It's in Phuket. It's a bit different than the average distances. So it's 1.5 kilometers in the sea. Then you run over the sand into 500 meter fresh water. Now that is an absolute killer. For the guys that swim, going from seawater to fresh water is something completely different, especially if you don't have a wetsuit on. So you just feel like you're sinking as soon as you go into the fresh water. Yeah, it's such a difference. Anyway, and then it is only 50 kilometers bike, but it is super hilly. I remember this year, I got off my bike because I could not go up all the way. And it was so hilly that I even had to take off my cycling shoes. I was walking on my socks. And if you just look up, there's 50 athletes in front of you, all pushing their bikes up. So it's super tough, but it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And then it's a 12-kilometer run. I would highly recommend it for anyone.
So what are the distances that you just said, back to back?
1.8 in total swim, 50-kilometer cycle, 12-kilometer run. So it's doable. It's 100% doable.
You just said you had to get off your bike and push it.
But it's not that bad. It's not that bad.
Yeah, I might just find another flat area and just go running again.
Yeah. Well, you just finished a marathon, right?
I know.
Yeah, ran a marathon in Vietnam.
Crazy.
A few weeks ago. It was really good. It was 42k, so 21k out along a coastline in Ha Long Bay, U-turn and then back. And Ha Long Bay has all those little islands that pop straight up out of the ocean. Those little bauble style islands. So for the first chunk, it was really beautiful looking out over the ocean. Then you just got off into the countryside. But yeah, it was mostly at sea level, and there was a massive bridge over from one headland to another. So lots of hills, talking about hills, lots of hills going up to the base of the bridge. The bridge wasn't too up and downy, and then undulating hills on the way back. So that was maybe between 5 and 9k, that distance. So all the way, U-turn, flat, all the way back, everything going great. Started to struggle a little bit. I was like, right, just get to the bottom of those hills, and then you can just walk up the hill and then like catch your breath and then go again. But it was actually on the way down, because at the top of the hill before you got to the bridge, there was like a down, up, down, up, down, up. And on the down bit, my quads started to cramp.
Always.
So I got a massive scare because I didn't want to cramp up completely. So I decided then I was going to walk. I walked 100 steps, ran 100 steps, walked 100 steps until I got across the bridge and back down. But frustratingly, my GPS on my watch, the time kept going, but the GPS stopped. And I didn't realize. So I'm looking at my watch and I've got like 7 kilometers left. Oh. And I'm looking at the time and I'm thinking, God, I'm going to come over 5 hours. Like, I better pick this up. But if I run, I'm going to cramp. So I was having, and when you're that exhausted, arithmetic doesn't work in your brain. Like, I don't even know if I could have used a calculator. My brain was so fried because I couldn't work out how long and what time and what split I had to do. I was just completely done. But got to the bottom of the hill and there's a sign, because it was really poorly signposted. Saw a sign 4K to the end. And I was like, oh, I thought I had 7. So I didn't believe the sign. I was like, is that wrong? Is that fake? Who's this for? The 5K people? What is this? So as I'm jogging anyway, I one of the 4:45 markers ran past me. And I was like, no, I'm not finishing behind these guys. So I tried to keep up with them, couldn't keep up with them. The next guy ran past me and I thought there was only 2. So I ran. And then they were both waiting at a corner, and they were like, the finish line's just around the corner. I didn't realize there was a third guy coming up behind me. So they were waiting for the guy who was actually keeping the 4:45 pace. They were just going fast to get some water and then waiting. So ran in at 4:44.24.
Fantastic.
The
Well done.
The photographs have the 4:45 guys behind me like with their white balloons, and I'm just like just elbow crawling over the line. But it was good. The guys, my clients who came with me, some of them did the 10K and the 21K that all went out and came back before me. So they were all at the finish line. One of the girls, who was her first marathon, to her amazing credit, she finished in 4:17.
Wow.
She came 6th in the ladies competition. Around about 19K, she started to pull away from, we ran the whole way. We were chatting, small talking about Vietnam, how beautiful it was. And then about 19K, she started to just drift off, and I sort of thought, I don't know if she's going too fast, but I'm at a real comfortable pace here, so I'm just going to stick at it. And then she was just U-turn and she was gone. So they were all at the finish line clapping and cheering, which was like that little bit of extra motivation to get you to. So picked up the pace, thought I was sprinting over the finish line. Like, I was like, yeah, really opened my stride, lifted my knees, heel flick. I'm like, yeah, make it look like this is easy. Make these people think that you're doing well. About 5 meters from the line, everything cramped. Literally, like, I just got electric shocks in my hamstrings and quads. I just had to slow up and walk. So I just walked across the line. And then when I look back at the video where the guys were videoing me finishing, my run is like a zombie.
That's so funny.
The run that I thought I was like high knees, arm swing.
Same bolt.
It's worse than what I thought. So who knows what my worst run was around that last corner. I would hate to have seen it. Like, I don't know what it was going to be. But I finished it, 4:44. I didn't quite get the goal I had of running the whole thing. I wanted to run the whole thing from start to finish. But yeah, I'm really happy. I don't know what my splits were, because that split 7 was like 25 minutes long. That seventh last kilometer was...
Well, you could do another one.
Oh, so I don't mind doing another one in the future, but not in Dubai. Because the prep that you have to do, and don't take this advice if anybody's in Dubai listening, this is just the struggle that I had. The event was November, so we had to train in August, September, October, which is super hot. So that meant you have to be out running at 5 a.m. Because if you're finishing anytime after 8, it's death. You're so hot, especially if you've already been running for an hour or 2 hours, or you're planning on running an hour into 9 or 10 a.m. So you got to end up doing like 2.5 hour runs, 3 hour runs close to the event. So that just means you got to go at 5 a.m., which is fine if your husband or your wife is willing to go with you. But when that starts to eat into your night before and your week before, where like I need to just like, if you're my point is, if you're in the UK or Europe or in Australia, where the weather's a bit more temperate in the middle of the day, you can enjoy your usual life and then go out running at 10 a.m., finish at lunchtime without melting. but in Dubai, it's just, for me, it's just too hot. So please don't let me do another marathon in the next few while I'm here. Everybody,
or plan it so you can train in winter time.
yeah, I did too in winter, but that's also equally difficult because the heat still
Well,
gets you.
Yeah, it does.
To put both of you to shame, I'm going to run the 10K.
Hey.
I know.
Which one?
Like the Standard Chartered one.
Wow, that's fantastic.
In like 3 weeks.
Yeah. Come on, guys.
Good.
That's
Yeah,
good
good.
on you. That's very good.
Caroline gets foot pain in her feet when she runs.
So I'm a recovered injured person, not recovered entirely, but yeah. So running is really hard for me because I can't walk for like days and days
Yeah.
and days after. So yeah. So now I've built up to the point where I can run 6Ks
Awesome.
and still be like, I can still wake up the next day and not be in agony, which is amazing.
That's fantastic to have
Yeah.
broken that many bones and biomechanically you are completely altered. So to go
yeah.
do that, to even do 5K, that's fantastic.
Oh no, good work.
It's motivation.
Have you booked it and paid for it?
Yeah, I booked and paid for it.
Oh, wow,
all done.
amazing.
I know, I'm really scared.
Don't be, you'll be great.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna die. This little body has not run 10Ks.
Are you doing it by yourself?
In like years. So
Cool.
anyway, yeah, we'll see. If you
We'll
see me the next
support.
day with crutches, you'll be like, oh, you got them from
Well,
your closet. Yeah.
You're in your closet. As long as you're
They
not in
are
a
in my
wheelchair
closet.
and as long as you're happy with how it went.
Yeah.
Mm.
I like, even if I walk, I'm happy. So anyway,
Yeah,
And
that's
I
just
know,
very good.
I know the biokineticist who can help you with the rehab.
amazing.
Yeah.
Got you sorted.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to have a little prep talk with my feet. Like, you guys, you can do this.
Come on now, you can do this.
You remember this. We used to do this before.
Yeah.
You're going to be fine.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
well done.
Yeah, and still a broken back. Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm running 10Ks with a broken back.
No, that's seriously, that's amazing.
We'll
It's
see how it
mental.
goes. As long as you're still standing when it's finished in the next few days, it's okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so
Yeah.
I just wanted to put you both to shame, your little Ironman marathon.
Yeah. No, well, this is the kind of thing that speaking to people on this podcast has made me sort of appreciate is like the complaints about things that I have are pretty minuscule in relation to what they could be.
Oh, because you're talking to me now.
Talking to you, well, yeah, a little bit. Well, I've been talking to you for years.
I always make you feel better about
Yeah.
yourself.
I'm feeling a bit down. I pick up the phone, Caroline, how are your feet? Oh, okay. I need to. Well, to be fair, it's like right. I need to just slap out of my little soft dramas and just get on with it because it could be way worse.
Yeah, everyone has a worse situation than you have, right?
I think that
Yeah.
comes as well, like you kind of said at the beginning. It's not that I don't have any sympathy for people, but when I have people who complain about A, B, and C, and I've worked with serving military men who all they want to do is get back to work, and they've been seriously broken and they feel seriously hard done by a system, like, and then with the recovery that you had to face, and people like that, it's just you do lose sympathy. You shift. I wouldn't say
Yeah,
you lose.
the
You
benchmark
shift.
yeah.
You shift your sympathy for a look. White collar office man, your foot's sore.
Yeah,
Like, come on, you're doing nothing about it.
yeah, I agree.
As opposed to, I have these other people this morning who are really badly hurt and they are doing their utmost to improve and they're looking after everything and they're juggling a family, they're juggling a job, they're juggling a business. And you seem like it's the worst thing in the world that you
Yeah.
can't go and get on your $10,000 bike and go cycling.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
So yeah, it
Exactly.
does kind of rehab. I think shifts your perspective on how things could be.
It does completely, and it kind of reminds me some days if I look at the people and how hard they can push themselves, it makes me realize that I can do so much more. Because sometimes when you run, you get that self-pity. Say for instance, in the triathlon, the last 5K, you hate your life, and it's so hard. And it sometimes, honestly, I'm reminded of my clients and how hard they can push
Yeah.
themselves. And with a guy, I've got a guy now with the ACL reconstruction, and he's pushing himself every session that he's lying on the floor and he wants to puke. And it's good on him. It reminds me that someone else is pushing themselves so hard. You can do this. You can push yourself a little bit harder than just running and feeling fatigued.
Yeah, yeah. David Goggins is a guy.
I love him. I listened to his whole audiobook.
Yeah,
I swear he made me feel like I could do anything.
that's awesome.
Really.
People should listen to it. It's called
I
Can't Hurt Me.
know.
I've just started it, but before that, I heard a quote a long time ago, but he's got the world record for the most pull-ups in like 24 hours. He did thousands. That's how I heard about him first. But he his like kind of mentality is most people quit at 40%.
Wow.
And I could kind of understand that in the overall perspective. Like, you quit when you think you're done, not when you're actually done.
Yeah, that's so true.
When I'm on the marathon, I'm fine. I'm like, look, I've started this, I'm going to finish it. But I think about the people and their struggles and what they're confronted with when I'm lying in bed at 4:30 a.m. and my alarm's going off, and I'm like, I could just kill this and go back to sleep.
Yeah. Do you know what I love about his book is how he describes the physical attributes of pushing yourself, not to making yourself physically stronger, but to making yourself mentally stronger. And this is what you're gonna hear when you listen to his book, that it's not about training your body, it's about training your mind. And you train your mind so that you're physically training your body because it's training your mind, and you're training your mind so that you can actually overcome anything that comes your way. And so cool. That's the point of it. So that if anything happens in your life, your mind is strong enough to be able to go, I can do this. That's what I loved and what I took from his book. And then he just makes you feel so pumped. It's amazing. I love it.
I'm gonna listen
to it. And do you know what? The audiobook is actually better,
awesome,
because him and his friend who ghost wrote his book, it's almost like a podcast. So after every chapter, they have like a little discussion about it, and it's very colloquial, very just conversational, and it's so good.
I'm definitely gonna listen to that.
He had a tough upbringing, and then he wanted to do something with his life. He went for the Navy SEALs, and he failed out of it, and then decided to go again. And it's just about that struggle.
Are you up to that part? He does it 3 times. I'm not even going to tell you what he does after, because it's ridiculous. Like, he's ridiculously intense.
I don't know if I'm on the second or the third one, but it's really good. He's going to be a big character in the world of motivation, because he's just like, I'm not here to help you. I'm just like, I'm doing my thing because I was once in a really bad place, and now I'm just free and I'm doing what I love to do.
That's awesome. I'm definitely listening to that.
Yeah, but particularly if you want motivation for your Ironman, because some of the things that he does is ridiculous. So he does 3 SEALs trainings. Then I think he's in the Air Force first, whatever they call the parachute people that jump out of planes. Then he goes into the SEALs, does the Hell Week 3 times. Then he tries to get into Delta Force, which is I think it's in the military, the elite military training. So he does that. Eventually, when he retires from the army, he becomes a firefighter. So just intense, but amazing, very inspirational kind of
I would
life.
say, though, the start of the book, I wasn't expecting it, is very heavy when he talks about his upbringing. It's like he had a tough upbringing. So I wasn't expecting, I didn't know that about him. But anyway, it's a good book. Check it out. Yeah, and you're right. The audio book, they have the guy who reads the book and him have a conversation about every chapter after.
What is the guy's name?
David Goggins, and the book is Can't Hurt Me.
Okay.
Yeah. And then have a look at his Instagram as well. Really inspirational. One of the things I like doing, just on a personal note, is I love to listen to people who have amazing lives, and it just makes you be like, okay, I can do this. This is easy. If you can do 2,000 pull-ups, I'm going to do this. Wow. I can walk. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So listening to somebody like him, and he's just talking to you through your ears into your brain, you're just like, yes, feeding your mind this amazing, it's like,
No, it's awesome. I would definitely recommend it for sure.
We've digressed a lot.
That's fine.
Talking about.
It's all about overcoming the struggles, isn't it?
Exactly.
Going back to the cancer patients, you can do it. There's a way. He does it by himself, which is hugely impressive. I would always recommend people to get a community around you. Get a support mechanism, get a trainer, get your doctor, get everybody talking, get your friends and family to support you as much as they can. He does it all just solo. He's a bit crazy. Yeah,
but I think going back to and tying this all together, you're right about cancer patients or rehab patients. More than anything else, it is about moving your body, but it's also about making your mind really resilient and strong, and convincing it of something other than all of the crap it can speak to itself.
Exactly.
And a lot of the time, the stuff it talks to itself about is rubbish. Like sometimes the things my mind says to me, I'm like, who are you? Like, don't live here, please. Go somewhere else. And when you hear about all of these other inspirational stories, it really makes you feed your mind something else. Like, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do an Ironman or a marathon or crazy things.
And really looking at the small victories and taking that small victories, because sometimes the most people, you don't look at the small victories, right? But there's always improvement. I know from the rehab guys, say for instance ACL or ankle rehab, whatever the case is, they always come in and they're so demotivated. And the first question they ask you is, am I ever going to be able to play again? Will I ever be able to do this again? And I actually love that part of the rehab, because you can see them grow from not being able to go into a full squat to going into a single leg squat with a jump, or, you know, from not being able to walk on the treadmill properly to doing sprint intervals on the treadmill. So it's amazing. And just to take that small victories, whether it is you doing the 10K or you doing the marathon, you know, just to take the small victories of what you're doing at that moment. If you have overcome cancer, for instance, it's such a big victory. Like, take that and don't focus on the negative, you know, take all the small victories and focus on the positive.
Yeah, and you'll be surprised like how far you develop. I went to MOA the other day and I was sitting there waiting for, I can't even remember what I was waiting for. And I remember looking at the bathroom there and looking. So do you know where PF Chang's is? There's a bathroom really close to it.
Oh, yes,
I remember like literally about 2 years ago, I went to the bathroom and I was like still on crutches, and the distance, it's about 200 meters from the bathroom to where someone picks you up, like the exit of the mall. So that's 100, maybe 100 meters. I couldn't walk that on crutches. Like, I was halfway through and I stopped and I had to sit down on the little like side thing, and I was crying because I couldn't make it to the end.
Wow.
While you're
And
in pain?
yeah, I was in so much pain. I couldn't stand. My feet couldn't feel the floor underneath me because they hurt so much. And I remember thinking like, the exit is so close. Like, just get to the exit. There's a car there. You can get in a taxi. You can go home. Like, it's so close. Like, I can do this. I can walk 100 meters. And it was such a small distance, and now I think, oh my God, like I can walk 100 meters. That's easy. Like,
Wow.
oh, it's crazy. But it takes a long time. That's what people don't realize. Like, people think that healing is really quick, and it's not at all. It takes ages, and it takes a lot of time. Anyway.
Yeah, but I think you have to focus on the little victories on these long journeys.
Yeah.
Like, one of the best things that I remember from the rehab with the military guys was one of the guys coming back in after a weekend and saying, I was able to play with my kids in the garden.
Exactly.
He was able to play for like his knee, or I can't remember what it was, but something didn't hurt him. And it was the first time, and I was like, that's why we do it. That's why
Exactly.
I do it. It's not
Exactly.
really to make this guy have a better six pack, you know, get from 10% to 6%. The other people can help that guy. But, you know, for you to be able to play with your kids in a after however many months of just being hurt, that's life changing for you, and that's life changing for your kids, because now you can actually, you know, function better and give everybody more love and more happiness and more memories and all that. So like, that's he might not have been able to run 10K, but for him that's a huge victory.
Exactly.
That's a huge thing. So like, you getting to the point of getting off your crutches, that's as big a victory as somebody losing 10 kilos.
Exactly.
Do you know? So with those rehab guys, yeah, it's all about setting mini targets, I think, and right, what are we going to be able to do? Make a little video how poorly they are at something at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And we'll leave that now. We'll come back to that in a year,
Exactly.
and then we'll show them again and we'll go, look, see, ta-da. And that's not me, or it's not you, it's them that's doing.
It's their hard work.
Yeah.
It's their efforts.
So then, yeah, so you got your thing then in the main goal this year, 2019, new goals, new year, new you.
New year, new me. You know, I put a post the other day on Instagram as well, saying that there's a lot of people that are so against the New Year's resolutions and things. I'm all for it. I think it's a new beginning. I'm like probably 90% of the other population that you want to start your diet in the beginning of the new week. Who starts your diet on a Wednesday?
Do you know, physically, I cannot do that. Mentally, I can never start a diet on a Wednesday.
I cannot.
Ever. Like, right now, I'm waiting for Sunday
Yes,
so I
yes.
can start.
Yes. So I think it's great. It's new year. It's new opportunity to reach your goals. Just make it more reasonable, more achievable. So goals for me, definitely Ironman Dubai is a big one, half Ironman. trying to qualify. If I don't qualify, it's not the end of the world. I'm going to then try and qualify in the next race. But yeah, so Ironman World Champs is a big one. Yeah.
Cool. And then where can people follow your stuff and get in touch with you online? What's your sort of handles on Instagram or whatever?
So my handle is Anja Taljaard _PTC. So my name and my surname.
Do you want to spell both of those for people who aren't Afrikaans?
So it is ANJATALJAARD _PTC on Instagram, and just my name and my surname, so Anja Taljaard on Facebook.
Cool.
That's
All right, so if anyone has any questions or whatever, they send them your way.
Yeah, sure.
Amazing.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So see you guys.
Bye.